If I Should Die by Donevy Westphal. Available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other retailers.
He wandered back into the house as Michael and Ruth left. Julius C. Armstrong, what are you doing? Mrs. McDonald demanded with a jump. I'm coming in to talk with you. What are you doing? Just resting my eyes, that's what they call it. Even when we're snoring at 50 decibels. My, you did give me a start though, she fanned herself with paper. Ruth just started me on this crochet pattern, but now I've messed up, she frowned and tried to straighten the yarn out. I suppose Ruth and Michael have gone and you are left here to keep me company, you poor thing, she continued, still fingering the yarn she could not see. Ruth and Michael are gone, but I am not poor, thank you very much. Here, let me look at the pattern. I used to know something about such things. He took the pattern, and by holding the pattern in one hand, he looked over the yarn and the work that had been done. No, he said, you're still right. Here's the color you need. He took her hands and guided them, reestablishing where she was in the pattern. I'm surprised at you, young man, the white-haired woman smiled. Why's that? Most young men wouldn't own up to knowing anything about crocheting. Well, it isn't common knowledge at work, man. Does your wife like crochet? She asked. Julius sighed, his face twisted in English. No, but she likes scraps. I'm surprised that you would remember them. Remember what? How to crochet. Julius's face puckered in a troubled frown. My friend, Mrs. McDonald began with a slight hesitation on the word friend. Laying her crochet work down with care, she took his large, strong hand in both of her careworn ones. God's purpose does not fall to the ground. He does not propose in vain. How could you people have any place in my purpose? Julius's voice wavered as he struggled for control. There are things I can't tell you. I seem to have stumbled into you folks. I wish, he paused to swallow the goose egg lodged in his throat. God is my witness. I wish I could unstumble. My business puts your lives at risk. Our earlier altercation may have to do with your previous run-ins, or not, but I must finish my affairs here. What's wrong, my Julius? My whole life is one big risk. I've been running, and now I don't know. I have no chance except to continue. Are you finished with your task? Her face grew gray and pained. No. Would you leave your task unfinished? He bowed his head over their clasped hands and shut his eyes. No, he whispered. Running her fingers soft as silk over the top of his sinewy, powerful hand, her voice almost a whisper. When God opens a door, you're supposed to walk through it. We've been in danger here. Ruth, her family, and friends continue to be tormented no matter what or where your affairs. If you were called here to us, there is a reason. She squeezed his hand, then picked up her work where she left off. I didn't walk through the door. God picked me up and threw me. Julius sat down and watched his hostess crocheting. A young man, a young woman, and a blind woman. Against an unscrupulous, ruthless enemy? Junko and Mai, what about them? She stopped crocheting at the end of the row. God's judges have often been destitute, weaponless, and against impossible odds. I will pray for your family, and don't frown, it will give you bad wrinkles. Her hands continued where she left off. Are you sure you can't see? His eyes narrowed and searched her face as his frown deepened. No, I don't see with my eyes. But the blind don't see with their eyes, they see with their heart, Ruth finished the sentence, coming in followed by Michael. All's quiet on the northern front. Michael stood beside his mother's chair. You have to be careful with her, Ruth smiled at Julius. She reads minds and hearts easier than most people read books. Yeah, Michael grinned. As a little boy, I could hardly think of doing something naughty, but what she had me by the nape of my neck and headed for the woodshed. After the first few little books, it becomes easier and easier. Mrs. McDonald dismissed their chatter with a nod and continued crocheting. What's going on tomorrow, Michael? Not much, Mum. His thoughts were somewhere else as his fingers ruffled through his hair, mimicking his older brother. I've got to be at the store most of the day. Anything you need from Herman? Donna, Ruth, and I will be going shopping sometime this week. I'm just sorting plans. Well, I'm going for a drive, Julius stood up. I don't expect to be gone long, just long enough to blow the cobwebs out. I'll see you all later. Julius headed for the breezeway. He backed his car out of the garage and idled down the driveway, then cruised into Beetle River. Pretty quiet. Nothing happened here except a dog chasing a black and white cat across several yards. Some young punks smoking cigarettes lounging on the steps of an old apartment building. He turned the corner and had to touch his brakes to slow down to miss some dog the same dog chasing the same cat across the street in front of him. All the businesses were closed now except the R&R pub. He drove out south of town and headed west. Not even a dog chasing a cat out here. Julius spied an old blue pickup truck along with the shoulder of the road, a jack propped up on one side. Some guy in faded blue jeans peered down at his flat tire. Pulling up beside the man, Julius called out the passenger side window. Need some help? Yeah, I guess so. As the fellow straightened, Julius noted a physically fit, tall, and well-built man in his early 50s. Julius recognized him as the same fellow he had seen at Mom and Pop's the other morning, the one who had spit on the step. My spare seems to have gone down too. I need to run up the road yonder to my place and get some more air in it. He motioned with his free hand, took off his hat, and scratched his head and slapped the cap back on. I'd appreciate it if you give me a lift that far. I can do that. Throw your tire in back there. I'm in no hurry. The man threw the tire in the trunk and came around and folded into the passenger seat. Thanks, he said. You're new around here, aren't you? Yeah, Julius C. Armstrong. He reached his hand across. Jack O'Brien. The older man nodded at the introduction and grasped his hand. I don't know how come that tire went flat, but I don't figure how my spare is down also. Glad you came along. It's not far, but bumping a tire down a gravel road isn't great entertainment. I've heard about your book project. You find much for a story in Beetle River? When my publisher sent me here, I thought, that guy's nuts. But as they say, every person has a story, and towns have theirs as well. I heard you're staying over to the McDonald's. That's me. Seem to be good folks. How do you know them? Jack asked. Well, it's kind of a story. Let's just say I got lost in the desert. I've done that before, too. The laugh lines crinkled around Mr. O'Brien's eyes. Say, you just pull up the drive here and back up there beside the shop. He motioned to a large pole-frame building as they pulled into the drive. I'll just run the hose from the generator to the tire in the trunk, and we'll soon be on our way. Thanks for your help, Mr. Armstrong, he said a few minutes later as they pulled back onto the road. Just call me Julius. Julius. It would have taken me a lot. Well, I'll be, Jack scowled as they approached his pickup. A lone figure lounged against the driver's side door like a hungry snake looking for its frog. Look who's here, the devil himself. I sure appreciate your help. And no sense you getting on the wrong side of the law. Might as well skedaddle. His scowl deepened as he pulled up beside his vehicle. You may need some help. I'll stick around just in case. Julius switched his engine off and opened his door. Suit yourself. It's always welcome to have someone covering your back. Jack shot a quizzical glance over his shoulder as he climbed out. From all that Julius had heard about Officer Philip Meacham, a person would think the man would be a 10-foot ogre. In Julius's estimation, he stood less than 6 foot and appeared to be trim, good-looking, dark-haired young man, even out of uniform. Julius slid out, shut his door, and watched as Mr. O'Brien sauntered to the back of the car, hefted his tire out of the trunk, and rolled it over to where his pickup waited. He ignored the person leaning against the pickup door as he began to replace the tire. O'Brien, Meacham spoke in a cocky tone of voice. O'Brien, why don't you get something better than this old rust bucket? Same reason you don't get a brain, Jack drawled his reply without looking up. I don't have mine to. Julius watched Meacham's jaw muscle twitch with anger.